Well, I don't know, Ejaz. That's a good question, and I think that's kind of one of those what-if questions that you get about history that are hard to answer. I will say that what if they had accepted our many offers of very large financial assistance and not made a nuclear test? You could ask that too. What would have happened between to the Pakistani-U.S. relationship? It would have improved dramatically right from May of 1998. So when you say that there should have been a better incentive structure, I never believed in sanctions anyway for anybody on anything because having been trained as an economist, I don't think sanctions work very well. And they usually hurt the kind of people that you don't want to hurt in a country. But I know that those of us, please don't think I'm speaking for the U.S. government on this, because I know that it and others are moving towards sanctions on Iran too, but that's another question. But there could have been a better incentive structure had we not had such a list of sanctions, and had we had a much more, shall we say, accommodative relationship.
On the nuclear issue, of course, that being one of those what-if questions where you also have to add another variable, i.e. India. But on Afghanistan, the reason I asked about the incentive structure is because even today, there are some analysts who look at it from the incentive structures framework and say that the US has not come up with the kind of incentive structure that would have got Pakistan to actually look at the entire thing in terms of cost benefit from a different perspective. So, which is why I thought the incentive structure question then was relevant given the situation today.
It's relevant every day. It's been relevant for the last 15 years, I suspect. And yes, and I know what you're talking about. People have talked about a security incentive, security agreement, perhaps a nuclear engagement such as they have with India, which, by the way, is on the, I gather, at least on the public table. It's been out in the newspapers. Whether it's actually being discussed, I don't know. If there had been that kind of incentive structure, I think we'd have had a much different history over the last 2 decades.
Okay, something more sort of personal.
Yeah.
What was your opinion or your assessment of Nawaz Sharif when you came in as the ambassador? I'm sure you must have filed some report about what you think of him or what your assessment is.
I don't think that's a fair question. I mean, the man's still an active politician. I'm still here in Pakistan, and I want to come back frequently.
Okay, you've answered my question.
Yes.
But what was your assessment of General Musharraf?
That changed, I might add. When I got to know him even before the takeover. In fact, when he took over as Army Chief of Staff, I had not been here very long. I had only met his predecessor, General Karamat, once or twice, and I was sorry to see him go so quickly. But I hustled over to GHQ as soon as I could get a meeting, and had a meeting with General Musharraf, and then I did that about once every month or 6 weeks for the next year, and I found him an amiable guy, a very moderate thinking guy, a guy that you kind of liked personally. And then, when he took over, he remained in many ways the same person, but I think he made a whole lot of mistakes over the next few years that were sort of deadly and lethal.
Okay, we're going to take a short break on that note, and I will come back and ask you what you think those mistakes were. सियासियात में खुश आमदेद। हम महवे गुफ्तगू हैं पाकिस्तान में अमेरिका के साबिक सफ़ीर विलियम बी माइलम से। Bill, what was the assessment when General Musharraf did Kargil?
that it was a terrible mistake, that in fact it undermined what we thought, we were very pleased to think, was the start of a real rapprochement between India and Pakistan. You know, there was the February, I think it was the February
Yes.
Lahore summit where the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Vajpayee, arrived in a
But
bus.
what did you think, how did it reflect on Musharraf's sense of strategy?
Well, it reflected a sense that he didn't have a good sense of political strategy, at least, I think. You know, the Kargil thing is, I think, is quite complicated because it obviously was planned and began, actually, as I understand it, before the February Lahore meeting started. There were already troops over there, and the Indians didn't discover them for quite a long time. But I think it was because I think the prime ministers had been working on this Lahore meeting and this whole idea of moving forward together for quite a long time, and it strikes me as a kind of strategically a terrible mistake to have even put troops over there.
You said something interesting, that the sort of, in terms of Musharraf's understanding of political strategy. So if you think that he lacked a good sense of political strategy, how do you think he would have fared as a political leader, even one in uniform? And that kind of goes back and links up with what you said about the various mistakes that he committed.
Well, I think he fared pretty badly as a political leader, and it made me sorry because I like the man personally. But he seemed to, when he became the political leader, he seemed to bring with him what I would call the Army playbook. I mean, everything was done according to how it had been done 20 years earlier, and there was had to look very hard to see much difference, except in the two men who were the two leaders at the time. And you know, and he said he was. He told me in our first meeting after he took over, and he kept repeating it to me in public, that his purpose was to get rid of sham democracy and to reform the system, and yet nothing that happened over the next 2 years that I was here showed me that there was any progress on that at all.
Talking of that, now that democracy is back and Musharraf is gone, how do you look at Pakistan? What do you think? Has anything changed qualitatively, or is it more of the same?
You know, it's really hard to answer that. I remember a good friend of mine who told me that when he was outside Pakistan it looked bad, but when he was inside it looked a lot better, so he preferred to be inside. I'm outside most of the time, but when I come here, I'm inside. And you know, it looks very different inside. You see people who are energetic and modern and going about their everyday business and trying to help the country and so forth and so on. And you wonder